My name is Courtney Bentley. I'm a special education consultant for Keystone AEA, and this video is to help teachers see how to explicitly teach decoding of multiple syllable words for students who are struggling to decode those larger words within text. Before we get started, I wanted to make sure that I give credit where credit is due. Some of the resources that you will see today are strategies taken from the University of Kansas. It's also referred to sometimes as the dissect strategy. I have borrowed some word lists from ontrackreading.com. And I have also utilized some word lists of common prefixes, common suffixes, and Greek and Latin origin words. Some of them are from the Center for Development and Learning, which is a nonprofit organization from Louisiana. And then there's also a word list from the Teaching Reading Sourcebook. And all of those resources could easily be searched on Google, or you can probably find them very easily on your own. But I am also going to attempt to attach those word lists on the description component of the YouTube channel. So if you are interested in utilizing the lists that you see today and using those resources within your teaching, I want to make sure that you have access to those as well. So to sort of break down what this strategy is all about, if you're watching this video, you've determined either through teacher observation or a diagnostic assessment like the Quick Phonics Screener, or through some of your error analysis of a student's reading, have determined that while there are some maybe foundational components intact with decoding, that the student can read simple words and knows some of the basics for decoding, they're really getting stuck, and their lowest skill deficit falls with reading those bigger multiple syllable words that have prefixes, words that have suffixes, and some of those more complex components that sometimes students are a little scared by when they are in greater length. So this is very specific toward the kids who have basic decoding strategies intact, but do not have the attack strategies for decoding those larger words. So as an overview of what the main rule for the strategy or the routine that I'm going to show you today, when a student comes upon an unfamiliar word, it's larger, they're going to first learn to identify the prefix in the word. They're going to then identify a suffix if there is one within the word. And then they're going to learn how to chunk up the middle section or the root of that word into decodable syllables. So I'm going to show you the rules here on this PowerPoint, but then I'm going to go over to a video so you can actually see it in action and see what it looks like, and hopefully you'll be able to utilize it in your own classroom. So the steps are very simple. There are exceptions to the rule, but the basics for starting are here. The student will start with a word provided to them. If there is a prefix, they're going to divide that off first. The second step will be that if they identify a suffix in the word, they will divide that off second. And then for that last middle component, they will divide it off using two identifiers. If this syllable starts with a vowel, they're going to count over 2 letters and then make a division. If the syllable starts with a consonant, typically they will count over 3 letters and make a division. And then within those small chunks, they're more decodable, and it's less overwhelming for them to break it apart, sound it out, and then put it back together. So I'm going to escape out of this preview for just a moment. I want to show you what this actually looks like. I've provided the student with a very large word. They have learned, this is all of the components together, they've learned that there's a prefix there, so they are sectioning that off first. They are going to then take the suffix that they've identified and section that off second. They're left with a root in the middle now, and they have started with a consonant, so they know that they need to count over 3 letters and make their division. Their next section also starts with a consonant, so they're going to count over 3 letters and make their division. The next syllable starts with a vowel, so they're just going to count over 2. And then that very last section starts with a vowel as well, and that has already sectioned off for it. So now they're going to sound it out. Im, pos, ib, il, it, t. impossibility. That is a very quick overview of all of the pieces put together. One more example of it so that you can see it done again. The student is breaking off the prefix first as the first step. Some words have more than one suffix, so if the student can identify both of them when they are there, that makes it a little bit more doable as well. So there's two suffixes there, and there's just one component left, and the student knows that the C and the E together make the sound for sep. So it's exceptional, exceptional, put together, blended all in. This is not going to come all together at once for the student. You need to scaffold this and break this into parts. Numerous sessions will need to be first spent teaching them various prefixes, the most common prefixes found in context. So this is an example of a word list that you can provide to the student. You can teach them meaning of the prefix, so when they see it, they know it. Multiple sessions then will need to be spent teaching common suffixes. Suffixes can sometimes be more difficult to identify, so you will need to spend some more time, most likely, identifying those suffixes and then providing their meaning so the student knows what they mean when they see them. Some teachers are also spending additional sessions teaching very common Latin and Greek roots, so they know when they see those chunks together, they know what that sound makes, and they know what the meaning of that chunk is as well. It helps with the vocabulary development. And then the last step that we encourage teachers to take is when they know those skills and they've put the steps together, they use these skills in context. So we have highlighted ahead of time some multi-syllable words within the book Maze Runner, and you can pull those words out ahead of time and have them dissect them, break them apart, and then read them within their reading so that they make the tie-in that these words in isolation will be used within their reading. So one more time to break this down, this student is practicing just the prefixes first. That is the very first skill that you're going to teach them. This is going to take multiple sessions. You can teach 10 to 20 of them, depending on what the student is able to handle. And it will take multiple lessons or multiple weeks to do that. Once that is solid, you're going to want to teach them the most common suffixes that they see in their reading and practice lopping off those sections of the word. And then they're ready to dissect the middle. So this is one last example of what to do here. The student has broken apart the prefix. They've identified the suffix. One thing to keep in mind, there are sometimes the middle component doesn't make the typical sound that we typically think should go there. And so they need to use some of their context of knowing, well, what makes the most sense? What makes the sound make that word familiar to them? So there will be exceptions to the rule in regard to these steps. And so I want to go over that right now. Sometimes words, particularly in the middle, before I move on, I want to make sure that everyone has the ability to take a screenshot of these steps if you want to have them for your own record to know the way that these steps are done. But there are also exceptions to the rules. So sometimes that middle component does not follow the typical rules of, you lop off 3 letters or you divide at 2. So sometimes when there's a double consonant within that syllable, so a double L is very common, sometimes a double T. If you put those together, that's easier for them to identify and sound out. Another exception would be specific markers, or sometimes we call them digraphs, where they're 2 letters, but they make one sound, or they make a diphthong sound where you do want to put them together. So for example, CK, when you see those 2 letters together, they make the K sound. So you are going to want to keep those letters together and not separate them. So you're going to have to adjust and maybe move a letter over or 2. The third exception would be you want to add the next letter over to your original syllable or your first syllable if that next chunk is just really hard to say. Sometimes the division is awkward and you need to adjust a letter or 2 over one way or the other so that syllable makes more sense and is easier to say so that you can blend the whole word together. So there are exceptions. I would teach the basic steps first. I would be very careful as a teacher to provide words where they follow the rules and are easier to utilize the rules and are pretty straightforward. And then as they learn these steps, you can add in those more difficult words that sometimes break the rules, or you need to provide one of these exceptions in order to make the rules work. So again, I know it sounds like I'm probably repeating myself, but it's really important to break it down. That very first component of the video where it shows all of the pieces together, that is the type package that will be the end result of what your students should be able to do. But they will not be able to do that from the very beginning. You're going to need to scaffold it. You will need to break it down. You will need to provide small pieces and then put it all together after numerous sessions of lots of practice of each one of those steps. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to spend numerous sessions teaching the prefixes first. Depending on the student, some students can handle more of them at a time. Some of them can only learn a couple at a time. So you want to make sure that you're very explicit in teaching those prefixes and making sure they can identify them and also know what those prefixes mean. That will also improve their vocabulary ability as well by doing those things. After they have a solid understanding of what prefixes look like within a word, you're going to spend numerous sessions teaching the suffixes. Again, like I said, this is a more difficult task. Students have a harder time identifying where that suffix starts. So this may take a little bit more time. And again, you're going to want to break it down and teach however many suffixes at a time that that particular student can handle. You're going to then spend numerous sessions teaching how to break apart that middle sound, the middle sections into smaller syllables, and then how to blend those all together and practice the pronunciation of blending that all together. You're going to put all of those skills together over the course of numerous weeks. And then, like I said, some teachers are teaching Greek and Latin origins to help with the vocabulary building and to be able to chunk those parts together and know that they mean something based on those root words. And then we always encourage, like I said, we used Maze Runner in this example, but anytime at the end of a session, whatever skill they've worked on, if you could build that into some simple connected text, it doesn't have to be a big novel like Maze Runner. It could be a poem, it could be a small passage, it could be a really short article or something. Whenever they can tie in those words into connected text and see that in real life they're built into their reading, that will help them to generalize those skills as well. The last component that I wanted to cover before closing for the day is knowing whether or not these skills are actually generalizing and the student is using them on their own. Particularly if you are a special education teacher or a teacher who's working with a student who's being progress monitored. There's been lots of discussion about how to know whether or not this strategy is working. Some teachers are choosing to just continue on with their running records, or they're having the student read a passage or 1 minute time, but then paying very close attention to the accuracy of reading those larger words within their reading. Another possibility for students who really rely on context and maybe over-rely on the context of their reading, and they're able to read accurately within a sentence, but they have struggles with reading words in isolation. Some teachers are choosing to progress monitor by using multiple syllable word lists in isolation and just asking the student to read those words in isolation and tracking their accuracy to see if they're utilizing those skills when those words are by themselves. So I wanted to provide those options for you so that you are aware of the different progress monitoring tools that are out there as well. And just so you know, those word lists will be available as a link to my YouTube site as well, in case you want to have access to more word lists if you don't have enough in your toolbox. So I'm hoping that this video was useful to you, and if you have any questions and you live within our Keystone agency, please feel free to reach out to our literacy team or myself, Courtney Bentley. I would be happy to provide further assistance to you if you have more questions in regard to the multi-syllable reading strategy.